The morning mist hung low over Camila's sprawling estate in the Cotswolds as Detective Inspector Sarah Matthews received the most unusual call of her career. The voice on the other end belonged to Commander James Harrison from the Metropolitan Police's elite Royal Protection Unit, and his words sent a chill down her spine. "We have a situation involving the crown jewels." Harrison's voice was grave and measured. "3 pieces have gone missing from the Tower of London's collection, and all evidence points to Camila's private residence." Sarah had been investigating financial irregularities in several high-profile art transactions when this bombshell dropped. The missing items were no ordinary jewels. They included the Queen's ruby coronet, a diamond-encrusted ceremonial sword, and, most shocking of all, one of the spare crowns used during state ceremonies. The total value exceeded £50 million, but their historical significance made them truly priceless. The investigation had begun 3 days earlier when the Tower's head curator, Dr. Margaret Whitfield, noticed discrepancies during a routine inventory check. The security footage showed nothing unusual, which made the situation even more perplexing. It wasn't until forensic accountants discovered a series of suspicious financial transactions linked to shell companies that investigators began following a trail that led directly to Camila's doorstep. Commander Harrison explained that intelligence sources had uncovered communications between known art dealers and individuals connected to Camila's household staff. Phone records showed multiple calls between her personal secretary, Elena Rodriguez, and a mysterious figure known only as the Collector, someone who specialized in acquiring rare and valuable items through questionable means. Sarah's team had been quietly building their case for weeks, gathering evidence of an elaborate smuggling operation that used legitimate art sales as cover for moving stolen historical artifacts. Bank records revealed payments totaling millions of pounds flowing through offshore accounts controlled by trusts bearing Camila's name, though whether she was aware of these transactions remained unclear. The breakthrough came when undercover officers intercepted a meeting between Elena Rodriguez and Viktor Petrov, a Russian oligarch with connections to the international black market for stolen cultural artifacts. During their conversation, recorded by sophisticated surveillance equipment, Elena mentioned specific details about the missing crown jewels that had not been released to the public. As dawn broke over London, Sarah found herself leading a convoy of unmarked vehicles toward Camila's estate. The Royal Protection Unit had provided additional personnel, including specialists trained in handling sensitive royal matters. The operation required absolute discretion. Any leak to the media could create a constitutional crisis that would shake the monarchy to its core. The estate sprawled across 200 acres of manicured countryside, with the main house dating back to the 18th century. Its grand facade masked what investigators suspected was a sophisticated storage and distribution network for stolen artifacts. Previous surveillance had revealed unusual activity in the property's basement levels, including the installation of climate-controlled storage units typically used for preserving valuable art and historical items. Sarah's intelligence briefing revealed that Camila had been spending increasing amounts of time at the estate, often hosting private gatherings attended by wealthy collectors and art dealers from around the world. These events, marketed as exclusive cultural salons, may have served as cover for illegal auctions where stolen items were sold to the highest bidders. The legal framework for the operation was complex, given Camila's position within the royal hierarchy. Special warrants had been obtained through the Lord Chancellor's office, and every aspect of the search would be documented to ensure constitutional propriety. The Queen herself had been briefed on the situation, though her response remained classified at the highest levels of government. As the convoy approached the estate's main gates, Sarah noticed increased security presence. More guards than usual patrolled the perimeter, and several expensive vehicles with tinted windows were parked in the circular driveway. It appeared that Camila was hosting another of her exclusive gatherings, which could complicate the search operation significantly. The timing of the raid had been carefully calculated to minimize political fallout. Parliament was in recess, and most senior royals were engaged in official duties elsewhere in the country. Prince William was scheduled to attend a charity function in Scotland, which meant he would be safely away from any immediate controversy. However, intelligence reports suggested that someone within the royal household had been feeding information to Camila about the investigation. Security protocols had been breached, and there were concerns that evidence might be destroyed before the search could be completed. This added urgency to an already delicate situation. Sarah's team included specialists in art fraud, financial crimes, and royal protocol. Each officer had been carefully vetted and sworn to absolute secrecy. The operation, codenamed Crown Phoenix, represented the most sensitive investigation involving the royal family in decades. As they prepared to enter the estate, Sarah received an encrypted message on her secure phone. The text was brief, but alarming. Phoenix compromised. Expect resistance. Proceed with extreme caution. Someone had leaked details of the operation, and Camila's people were ready for them. The main house loomed ahead, its windows reflecting the early morning sun like watchful eyes. Sarah knew that within those walls lay evidence that could either clear Camila of any wrongdoing or expose a scandal that would rock the British monarchy. The next few hours would determine which path history would take. The estate's head of security, a former military officer named Marcus Steele, emerged from the main entrance as the police convoy pulled up. His demeanor was professional but tense, suggesting he had been expecting their arrival. Behind him, several well-dressed individuals could be seen moving quickly through the house's corridors. Clearly, Camila's guests were being evacuated through rear exits. Sarah approached the main entrance with her search warrant in hand, knowing that she was about to cross a threshold into uncharted territory. The investigation of a senior royal family member for theft of the crown jewels was unprecedented in modern British history, and the ramifications would be felt far beyond the walls of this elegant country estate. The morning air was crisp and still, as if the entire countryside was holding its breath in anticipation of what was about to unfold. In a few moments, Sarah would ring the doorbell of one of the most powerful women in Britain and formally accuse her of participating in the theft of the nation's most precious treasures. As she raised her hand to knock, Sarah's secure phone buzzed again. This message was even more shocking than the first. Prince William en route. ETA 15 minutes. Operation may be terminated on his authority. The heir to the throne was racing to intervene in the investigation of his stepmother, setting up a confrontation that could reshape the future of the British monarchy. The heavy oak door of Camila's estate swung open before Sarah could knock, revealing Elena Rodriguez, Camila's personal secretary. The woman's usually composed demeanor showed cracks of stress, and her hands trembled slightly as she stepped aside to allow the police entry. Detective Inspector Matthews, I presume, Elena said, her Spanish accent more pronounced than usual due to her obvious nervousness. Her Royal Highness is expecting you in the morning room. Sarah and her team moved through the grand foyer, their footsteps echoing off marble floors that had witnessed centuries of British aristocratic life. Oil paintings of long-dead nobles gazed down from gilded frames, their eyes seeming to judge the unprecedented invasion of law enforcement into this bastion of royal privilege. The morning room was a study in understated elegance, with cream-colored walls adorned with priceless artwork and windows that offered sweeping views of the estate's formal gardens. Camila sat behind an antique writing desk, her posture erect and dignified despite the circumstances. She was dressed impeccably in a navy blue suit, every inch the senior royal, but Sarah noticed the tension in her clasped hands. Detective Inspector, Camila acknowledged with a slight nod, her voice carrying the measured tones of someone accustomed to navigating difficult situations. I assume you have the necessary documentation for this visit. Sarah presented the search warrant, her words formal and precise as required by protocol. Your Royal Highness, we have reason to believe that items belonging to the Crown Estate may be present on these premises. We're here to conduct a thorough search as authorized by this warrant. Camila's expression remained neutral, but Sarah caught a flicker of something, surprise, perhaps, or calculation, in her eyes. I see. And what items specifically are you seeking? Before Sarah could respond, the sound of vehicles approaching at high speed echoed through the morning air. Marcus Steele, who had been standing silently by the French doors, spoke into his earpiece with obvious urgency. Multiple vehicles approaching the main gate. Royal Protection Unit markings confirmed. Elena Rodriguez moved to the window, her face pale as she observed the arriving convoy. Your Royal Highness, it appears Prince William is here. The tension in the room became palpable. Camila's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around the arms of her chair, while Sarah felt her heart rate accelerate. The investigation was about to become exponentially more complicated with the arrival of the future king. Detective Inspector, Camila said slowly, perhaps we should pause this conversation until Prince William can join us. I believe he may have concerns about the nature of your investigation. Sarah found herself in an unprecedented situation. Legally, she had every right to continue the search regardless of who arrived. But The political implications of proceeding without acknowledging the heir to the throne could be catastrophic for her career and the investigation itself. The sound of the front door opening reverberated through the house, followed by the measured footsteps of multiple people moving with military precision. Voices could be heard in the foyer, authoritative, urgent, but controlled. Sarah recognized the tactical movements of the Royal Protection Unit, taking defensive positions throughout the house. Prince William entered the morning room with the bearing of a man accustomed to command. Despite his relatively casual attire, he had clearly rushed from his previous engagement. His presence immediately dominated the space. Two protection officers flanked him, their eyes constantly scanning for threats even in this intimate setting. Detective Inspector Matthews, Prince William addressed her directly, his voice carrying both authority and what seemed like genuine concern. I understand you believe you have grounds to search my stepmother's residence for missing crown jewels. Sarah stood at attention, acutely aware that she was speaking to the future monarch of the United Kingdom. Your Royal Highness, yes, sir. We have substantial evidence linking this property to the theft of 3 significant pieces from the Tower of London's collection. Prince William's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He had been briefed during his hurried journey from Scotland, but hearing the allegations stated so directly clearly affected him. These are extremely serious accusations, Detective Inspector. I trust you understand the gravity of what you're suggesting. I do, sir. Which is why we've proceeded with the utmost care and discretion. Camila remained seated behind her desk, observing the exchange between her stepson and the detective with careful attention. Her years of experience in royal protocol served her well as she navigated this unprecedented situation. William, she said softly, perhaps you should hear what evidence these officers believe they have before we proceed further. Prince William turned to face his stepmother, and Sarah observed a complex interplay of emotions cross his features: concern, frustration, and what appeared to be deep personal conflict. The family dynamics at play were clearly complicating an already sensitive situation. Very well, he said finally. Detective Inspector, please present your evidence. But I want to be absolutely clear. Any suggestion that a member of my family has committed theft against the crown is a matter of the highest constitutional importance. Sarah opened her briefcase and withdrew a folder containing photographs, financial records, and communication transcripts. Your Royal Highness, 3 days ago, the Tower of London reported the theft of the Queen's ruby coronet, a ceremonial diamond sword, and the St. Edward spare crown. Our investigation has uncovered financial transactions linking shell companies controlled by trusts bearing Her Royal Highness's name to known art smuggling operations. She placed several documents on Camila's desk, pointing to highlighted sections. These bank records show payments totaling £8 million transferred to offshore accounts. The timing corresponds exactly with intelligence reports of the crown jewels being offered for sale on the international black market. Prince William examined the documents with the thoroughness of someone trained in military intelligence analysis. His expression grew increasingly grave as he absorbed the implications of the evidence before him. Furthermore, Sarah continued, we have recorded communications between Elena Rodriguez and Viktor Petrov, a Russian collector with known connections to stolen artifact trafficking. In these conversations, specific details about the missing items were discussed, details that were never made public. Elena Rodriguez gasped audibly from her position by the window. That's impossible. I never spoke to any Russian collector about crown jewels. We have the recordings, Ms. Rodriguez, Sarah replied firmly. Voice analysis has confirmed your identity. The conversations took place over a secure satellite phone registered to this estate. Camila finally spoke, her voice steady despite the mounting evidence against her household. Detective Inspector, I want to be absolutely clear about something. I have never, in my entire life, stolen anything from anyone, let alone from the Crown estate. If items belonging to the Crown have somehow found their way onto my property, I am as shocked as you are. Prince William studied his stepmother's face intently. Years of royal training had taught him to read people carefully, to detect deception even in the most composed individuals. What he saw in Camila's expression seemed to be genuine bewilderment rather than guilt. Detective Inspector, he said slowly, while I respect your investigation and the evidence you've presented, I find it difficult to believe that my stepmother would be involved in such a scheme. However, I also recognize that justice must take its course, regardless of titles or positions. Sarah sensed an opportunity to advance the investigation while maintaining royal cooperation. Your Royal Highness, with your permission, and that of Her Royal Highness. We would like to conduct our search immediately. If these items are indeed on the property, we need to secure them and determine how they came to be here. And if we refuse? Camila asked quietly. Ma'am, I have a valid search warrant. While I would prefer to proceed with your cooperation, I have the legal authority to conduct this search regardless. Prince William walked to the window overlooking the estate's gardens, his hands clasped behind his back in a gesture reminiscent of his father. The weight of the decision before him was evident in his posture. He was balancing his loyalty to family with his duty to the crown. Very well, he said finally, turning back to face the room. Camila, I believe we must cooperate fully with this investigation. If you're innocent, as I believe you are, then helping Detective Inspector Matthews find the truth is the best path forward. Camila nodded slowly, though Sarah noticed her knuckles were white where she gripped the arms of her chair. Of course, William. I want the truth revealed as much as anyone. As if on cue, Marcus Steele approached Prince William with obvious urgency. Your Royal Highness, we're receiving reports of media vehicles approaching the estate's perimeter. Someone has leaked information about the investigation. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Within hours, the story would dominate international headlines. Royal Guard storms Camila's estate, crown jewels missing. The constitutional crisis they had hoped to avoid was about to explode into public view. Prince William's expression hardened into the mask of resolve that had served the royal family through countless crises. Detective Inspector Matthews, I'm afraid we no longer have the luxury of proceeding quietly. We need to find these items immediately, before this situation spirals completely out of control. Sarah nodded grimly, understanding that the investigation had just entered a new and far more dangerous phase. The search of Camila's estate was no longer just about stolen crown jewels. It had become a race against time to prevent a scandal that could shake the very foundations of the British monarchy. The systematic search of Camila's estate began immediately, with teams of specialized officers spreading throughout the sprawling mansion like a carefully orchestrated military operation. Sarah had divided her personnel into 3 groups, one focusing on the main house, another investigating the numerous outbuildings, and a third examining the property's extensive basement network that intelligence reports suggested had been recently renovated. Prince William remained in the morning room with Camila, both of them watching through the tall windows as officers with metal detectors and ground-penetrating radar equipment moved across the manicured lawns. The surreal nature of the situation was not lost on either of them. The future King of England overseeing the search of his stepmother's home for stolen crown jewels. Elena Rodriguez had been separated from the others and was being interviewed in the library by Detective Sergeant Michael Connor, Sarah's most experienced interrogator. The personal secretary's initial composure had crumbled under questioning, and she was now providing details about her communications with Viktor Petrov that painted an increasingly complex picture of international art theft. She's claiming she thought she was helping arrange legitimate art acquisitions, Connor reported to Sarah via secure radio. Says Petrov presented himself as a representative of the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, looking to purchase pieces for their modern British collection. Sarah processed this information while supervising the search of Camila's private study. The room was filled with priceless artifacts and artwork collected over decades, each piece meticulously catalogued and displayed with museum-quality care. It seemed unlikely that stolen crown jewels would be carelessly stored among such a well-documented collection. Detective Inspector, called Officer Patricia Wells from the basement level, her voice crackling through the radio with barely contained excitement. You need to see what we found down here. Sarah made her way through the house's labyrinthine corridors to the basement access, passing several officers who were carefully documenting every room and its contents. The basement had indeed been extensively renovated, with state-of-the-art climate control systems and security measures that rivaled those found in major museums. The space was divided into multiple chambers, each designed for specific types of storage. Wells led Sarah to a room that had been concealed behind a bookshelf, a secret chamber that didn't appear on any of the estate's architectural plans. The hidden room was sophisticated, Wells explained, triggered by a specific sequence of books being pulled in the right order. When we finally got it open, we found this. The secret chamber was empty except for 3 wooden crates bearing shipping labels from various international art dealers. The crates themselves were unremarkable, but what caught Sarah's attention were the custom-fitted foam inserts inside, each shaped to hold specific objects that were no longer there. The foam inserts match the dimensions of the missing crown jewels exactly, Wells continued. And, look at this. We found traces of the same cleaning solvent used by the Tower of London's conservation staff. Sarah examined the evidence carefully, her mind racing through the implications. The chamber had clearly been designed to house the stolen items, but they were no longer there. Someone had removed them, likely very recently, possibly even after learning about the impending search. How recently were these crates moved? She asked the forensics specialist who had accompanied Wells. Based on the dust patterns and the condition of the foam, I'd estimate within the last 24 to 48 hours, came the reply. Whoever removed the contents knew exactly what they were looking for. Sarah's radio crackled with an urgent message from the team searching the outbuildings. Inspector, we found something in the converted stable block. You're going to want to see this immediately. Leaving Wells to continue processing the secret chamber, Sarah hurried across the estate grounds to the stable block, a beautifully restored 19th century building that had been converted into what appeared to be artist studios and workshop spaces. The team leader, Sergeant David Park, met her at the entrance with an expression of grim satisfaction. We've uncovered what appears to be a sophisticated forgery operation, Park explained as he led her through the building. Multiple workstations equipped with the kind of equipment you'd expect to find in a master forger's workshop. The converted stables contained an impressive array of specialized tools and equipment, high-end cameras for detailed photography, computer systems loaded with image editing software, precision metalworking tools, and even a small foundry capable of working with precious metals. It was a forger's paradise, equipped to reproduce virtually any kind of valuable artifact. But here's the most interesting part, Park continued, leading Sarah to a workstation near the back of the building. We found detailed photographs and measurements of all 3 missing crown jewels. These aren't casual tourist photos. These are technical documentation that would be used to create exact replicas. Sarah studied the photographs, noting the professional quality and the precise measurements annotated in the margins. When were these taken? Based on the metadata from the digital files, approximately 6 weeks ago. Someone had been planning this theft for quite some time. The implications were staggering. Not only had someone stolen the crown jewels, but they had also created detailed documentation that would allow for the production of perfect forgeries. This suggested a level of sophistication and planning that went far beyond a simple theft. It indicated an organized criminal enterprise with international connections. Sarah's secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message from headquarters. Media breach confirmed. Sky News reporting live from estate perimeter. BBC requesting official comment. Situation escalating rapidly. Looking out the stable block's windows, Sarah could indeed see news vans and satellite trucks gathering beyond the estate's gates. Telephoto lenses and camera crews were already documenting the police presence, and it would only be a matter of time before the full scope of the investigation became public knowledge. She made her way back to the main house, where Prince William was now in deep conversation with several members of his protection detail. His expression was grave as he listened to updates about the media situation and its potential ramifications for the monarchy. Detective Inspector, he called as she entered the morning room. I understand you've made some significant discoveries. Yes, Your Royal Highness. We've found evidence of a sophisticated operation involving both theft and forgery. However, the actual crown jewels appear to have been moved from the property very recently. Camila looked up from where she had been sitting silently, her face pale but composed. Detective Inspector, I want you to know that I had no knowledge of any secret chambers or forgery equipment on my property. This is as shocking to me as it is to you. Ma'am, I understand this situation is difficult, Sarah replied diplomatically. However, we need to determine who had access to your property and who might have been responsible for these operations. Prince William stepped forward, his bearing taking on the formal authority of his royal position. Detective Inspector, given the media attention this investigation is now receiving, I believe it's crucial that we establish the facts as quickly as possible. The integrity of the crown depends on it. Your Royal Highness, we're working as quickly as possible while maintaining the thoroughness necessary for a successful prosecution. Elena Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, escorted by Detective Sergeant Connor. Her face was streaked with tears, and her hands shook as she clutched a tissue. It was clear that the interrogation had broken through her earlier attempts to maintain composure. Your Royal Highness, she said, addressing Prince William directly. I need to tell you something. I was manipulated, but I may have inadvertently helped criminals target the crown jewels. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the weight of her words. Elena's admission represented the first direct confirmation that someone within Camila's household had been involved in the theft, even if unwittingly. "Elena," Camila said softly, "tell us exactly what happened." The secretary took a shaky breath before beginning her explanation. "6 months ago, I was approached by a man claiming to be Dr. Alexei Volkov, a representative of the State Hermitage Museum. He said they were interested in acquiring contemporary British artifacts for a new exhibition celebrating the friendship between Britain and Russia." She paused, struggling to maintain her composure. "He was very charming, very professional. He showed me credentials that seemed legitimate, and he spoke knowledgeably about art history and museum procedures. He convinced me that Her Royal Highness would be interested in facilitating cultural exchanges between our countries." Prince William listened intently, his expression growing increasingly concerned as the implications of Elena's story became clear. "Dr. Volkov asked me to provide detailed information about various royal artifacts and their security arrangements. He claimed this was standard procedure for insurance and transportation purposes. I thought I was helping with a legitimate cultural initiative." "What specific information did you provide?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Floor plans of the Tower of London that I obtained through my contacts in the royal household. Security schedules. Details about the crown jewels storage and display procedures." Elena's voice broke as she realized the full scope of her betrayal. "He said they were planning to request loans of certain pieces for their exhibition." The silence that followed was deafening. Elena Rodriguez had unwittingly provided criminal masterminds with all the information they needed to plan and execute the theft of the crown jewels. Her good intentions and misplaced trust had made her an unwitting accomplice to one of the most significant thefts in British history. Prince William's phone rang, interrupting the tense silence. After a brief conversation, he ended the call and turned to address the room with obvious urgency. That was the Prime Minister's office. "The story has broken internationally. BBC, CNN, and Sky News are all running live coverage. We have approximately 1 hour before I need to make an official statement to the press." Sarah realized that her investigation had just transformed into a race against time. With global media attention focused on the estate and pressure mounting for answers, she needed to track down the missing crown jewels before the situation spiraled into a full-blown constitutional crisis that could damage the monarchy's reputation for generations to come. The pressure in the morning room was palpable as Sarah's team worked frantically to trace the movement of the crown jewels from Camila's estate. Elena Rodriguez had provided them with Dr. Alexei Volkov's contact information, which had led to a breakthrough that nobody had anticipated. "Detective Inspector," Officer Wells reported via secure radio, "we've traced the phone number Elena provided. It's registered to a shell company in Monaco, but the interesting part is that the phone has been active within the last hour. GPS tracking shows it's currently located approximately 20 miles from the estate." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. If the mysterious Dr. Volkov was still in the area, it suggested that the crown jewels might not have been spirited out of the country as quickly as initially feared. "Do we have an exact location?" "The signal is coming from a private airfield near Cheltenham. Small operation that caters to wealthy clients who value discretion. The kind of place where you can land a private jet without attracting much attention." Prince William, who had been listening to the radio chatter while managing his own crisis communications, immediately stepped forward. "Detective Inspector, I'm authorizing the use of royal protection resources to assist in apprehending these criminals. We cannot allow the crown jewels to leave British soil." Sarah appreciated the support, but she was also aware that involving royal protection officers in what was essentially a criminal pursuit could create additional complications. "Your Royal Highness, with respect, I think it would be better if my team handles this operation. We don't want to create any appearance of royal interference in police matters." "Detective Inspector," Prince William replied firmly, "these are not ordinary police matters. We're dealing with theft of items that belong to the crown itself. I have both the authority and the responsibility to ensure their recovery." Before Sarah could respond, her secure phone rang with an urgent call from headquarters. The voice on the other end belonged to Assistant Commissioner Robert Harrison, the highest-ranking officer involved in the investigation. "Sarah, I need an immediate status update. The Prime Minister is demanding answers, and I've got pressure from Number 10 to resolve this situation before it becomes an international embarrassment." "Sir, we have a lead on the perpetrator's current location. They appear to be at a private airfield near Cheltenham, possibly preparing to leave the country." "Right. I'm authorizing a full tactical response. We're treating this as a matter of national security. Coordinate with royal protection, but make sure our people maintain operational control. As Sarah coordinated with the tactical teams, Elena Rodriguez provided additional crucial information about her interactions with the mysterious Dr. Volkov. Under gentle but persistent questioning from Detective Sergeant Connor, she revealed details that painted a picture of a sophisticated international criminal operation. He knew things about royal protocol that only insiders would understand, Elena explained, her voice stronger now that she had decided to cooperate fully. He spoke about specific security procedures at Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle. At the time, I thought it demonstrated his legitimate connections to cultural institutions. Did he ever mention other people involved in the operation? Sarah asked. Yes, there was someone he called the acquisitions manager, a woman with an American accent. She spoke to me twice on conference calls, asking very specific questions about transportation routes and security checkpoints. Prince William had been listening carefully to Elena's account, and his expression grew increasingly troubled. Elena, did this American woman ever identify herself? She said her name was Dr. Catherine Morrison, and that she represented a consortium of American museums interested in British royal artifacts. She seemed to know a great deal about the Tower of London's collection and its historical significance. Sarah made notes as Elena spoke, but her attention was divided between the interrogation and the radio chatter from the team preparing to move on the airfield. The tactical situation was complex. They needed to apprehend the criminals without allowing any opportunity for the crown jewels to be damaged or destroyed. Detective Inspector, came the urgent voice of Sergeant Park over the radio. We've established surveillance of the airfield. There's a Gulfstream G650 on the tarmac with its engines running. We can see 3 individuals loading cases into the cargo compartment. Sarah felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that accompanied the final phase of a major investigation. Can you confirm if the cases match the description of containers that might hold the crown jewels? Negative on visual confirmation, but the size and handling suggest heavy, valuable cargo. One of the individuals matches the description Elena provided of Dr. Volkov, tall, distinguished-looking man with silver hair and an expensive suit. Prince William stepped closer to listen to the radio traffic, his royal composure barely containing his obvious anxiety about the fate of the crown jewels. Detective Inspector, how long before your team can move to intercept them? We're coordinating with air traffic control to prevent any takeoff authorization, Sarah replied. But if they're prepared to ignore air traffic control and take off anyway, we have a very narrow window of opportunity. The radio crackled with updates from the tactical team leader. Subjects are moving with increasing urgency. They appear to be aware that time is running out. One individual is on a satellite phone, speaking in what sounds like Russian. Sarah made a quick decision that would determine the success or failure of the entire operation. All units, we're moving now. Coordinate approach from multiple vectors to prevent any escape attempt. Priority is securing the crown jewels intact. As the tactical teams moved into position around the airfield, Sarah realized that she needed to remain at the estate to continue processing the evidence and managing the media situation. The investigation was far from over, even if they successfully apprehended the thieves. Your Royal Highness, she said to Prince William, I think it would be appropriate for you to return to London while we handle the tactical situation. The Prime Minister will need to brief Parliament, and you may need to coordinate with the palace about public communications. Prince William shook his head firmly. Detective Inspector, I'm staying until this situation is resolved. These are the crown jewels we're talking about. As the heir to the throne, I have a personal responsibility to see this through. Camila, who had been quietly observing the unfolding drama, finally spoke. William, perhaps you should listen to Detective Inspector Matthews. This situation has already created enough complications for the monarchy. You don't need to be associated with what might become a violent confrontation. Camila, with respect, you're hardly in a position to give advice about protecting the monarchy's reputation, Prince William replied, his words sharper than intended. The tension between stepmother and stepson was evident, reflecting the strain that the investigation had placed on family relationships within the royal household. Elena Rodriguez, still overwrought from her confession, looked back and forth between them with obvious distress. Sarah's radio erupted with urgent communications from the airfield. Subjects are attempting to board the aircraft. We need authorization to move immediately, or we're going to lose them. Authorized, Sarah responded without hesitation. All units proceed to apprehend. priority remains on securing the stolen items safely. The next few minutes passed in a blur of radio chatter as the tactical teams closed in on the private jet. Sarah could hear the tension in the voices of her officers as they approached what could potentially be armed and dangerous international criminals. Contact, contact. Subjects are not resisting. We have 3 individuals in custody. Beginning search of the aircraft and cargo holds. Prince William moved closer to the radio, his knuckles white as he gripped the back of a chair. The fate of 3 of Britain's most precious historical artifacts hung in the balance. Inspector, came the voice of the tactical team leader, we've found them. All 3 crown jewels are here, packed in specialized transportation cases. The Queen's ruby coronet, the ceremonial sword, and the St. Edward's spare crown. They appear to be undamaged. The relief in the room was palpable. Prince William actually sank into a chair, the stress of the past few hours finally showing on his face. Camila closed her eyes and took a deep breath, while Elena Rodriguez burst into tears of what seemed to be relief mixed with continued remorse. Excellent work, Sarah responded. Secure the items according to Tower of London protocols and begin processing the crime scene. I want every piece of evidence documented before those artifacts are moved. But even as she coordinated the successful recovery of the crown jewels, Sarah knew that the investigation was entering a new phase. They had recovered the stolen items and apprehended the immediate perpetrators, but the broader questions about how such a sophisticated operation had been planned and executed remained unanswered. Detective Inspector, Prince William said quietly, I want to personally thank you and your team for your professionalism in handling this situation. I know it couldn't have been easy to investigate a member of the royal family. Your Royal Highness, we were simply doing our job. Though I have to say, this investigation has raised some serious questions about security protocols that will need to be addressed. Camila looked up from where she had been sitting silently. Detective Inspector, I hope you understand that I had no knowledge of what was happening on my property. I feel violated by the thought that criminals were using my home to store stolen crown jewels. Sarah studied Camila's expression carefully. While the evidence clearly showed that the theft had been planned and executed using her property, there was still no direct evidence linking Camila herself to the criminal conspiracy. Elena Rodriguez had been manipulated, the secret chamber had been constructed without Camila's knowledge, and the forgery operation in the stables had been concealed from the estate's owner. Ma'am, based on our investigation so far, it appears that you were a victim of this operation rather than a perpetrator. However, we'll need to continue our inquiry to determine exactly how your property was compromised and whether there are any other individuals involved. The sound of helicopters approaching the estate interrupted their conversation. Through the windows, they could see BBC and Sky News choppers circling overhead, their cameras undoubtedly capturing footage of the police operation for broadcast around the world. Prince William walked to the window and gazed up at the circling aircraft with obvious resignation. Detective Inspector, I believe it's time for me to face the media and explain what has happened here today. The public deserves to know that the crown jewels are safe and that justice is being served. As Prince William prepared for what would undoubtedly be one of the most challenging press conferences of his royal career, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary events of the past few hours. The investigation had begun with missing crown jewels and suspicions about royal involvement, and had evolved into the exposure of an international art theft conspiracy that had used one of Britain's most prominent royal residences as its base of operations. The immediate crisis had been resolved, but Sarah knew that the reverberations from this investigation would be felt throughout the British establishment for years to come. Questions about security, royal protection protocols, and the vulnerability of national treasures would demand answers that went far beyond the scope of her criminal investigation. 3 weeks after the dramatic recovery of the crown jewels, Detective Inspector Sarah Matthews stood in the oak-paneled conference room at Scotland Yard, preparing to present her final report on what had become known in the media as the Crown Conspiracy. The investigation had uncovered layers of deception and international criminal activity that extended far beyond the initial theft. The arrests at Cheltenham Airfield had yielded a treasure trove of information about the criminal network responsible for the theft. The man calling himself Dr. Alexei Volkov was actually Ivan Petrov, a former KGB operative turned international art thief with connections to criminal organizations across Europe. His female accomplice, who had posed as Dr. Catherine Morrison, was revealed to be Sophie Chun, a former art authenticator who had been dismissed from the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York for suspected involvement in artifact trafficking. The third member of the group, captured during the airfield operation, proved to be the most valuable source of intelligence. Marcus Hoffman, a German technology specialist, had been responsible for the sophisticated security bypasses and digital forgeries that made the theft possible. Under interrogation, he revealed the full scope of the operation that had been months in the planning. The conspiracy involved at least 12 individuals across 4 countries, Sarah explained to the assembled group of senior law enforcement officials, royal protection officers, and government representatives. Elena Rodriguez was just one of several unwitting accomplices who provided crucial inside information about royal security procedures. Commissioner Harrison nodded gravely as Sarah presented evidence of how the criminals had infiltrated multiple levels of the royal household and heritage organizations. Phone records revealed contacts with staff members at Windsor Castle, Buckingham Palace, and even the Houses of Parliament, all individuals who believed they were assisting with legitimate cultural and academic projects. The sophistication of this operation was unprecedented, Sarah continued. They created fake academic credentials, established shell companies in 6 different countries, and even produced counterfeit documentation from the Hermitage Museum and the Louvre to lend credibility to their cover stories. Prince William, who had insisted on attending the briefing despite royal protocol advisors' concerns, listened intently as Sarah described how the criminals had exploited the royal family's commitment to cultural exchange and diplomatic cooperation. The thieves had carefully studied royal schedules, public commitments, and security rotations to identify the optimal moment for their theft. The timing of the theft was particularly calculated, Sarah explained. They waited until the Tower of London was preparing for a major exhibition renovation, when security protocols were in temporary flux and additional personnel were moving through areas normally restricted to permanent staff. The recovered crown jewels had been extensively examined by conservation experts from the Victoria and Albert Museum, who confirmed that while the items had been handled and transported, they had suffered no permanent damage. However, the psychological impact on the royal household and the heritage community had been substantial. Camila, who had been completely cleared of any involvement in the conspiracy, had nonetheless found her reputation affected by the investigation. Public opinion polls showed that many Britons remained suspicious of her role, despite the lack of evidence connecting her to the crimes. The investigation had revealed the extent to which her estate had been compromised without her knowledge, raising serious questions about security protocols for senior royal family members. The secret chamber in Her Royal Highness's basement was constructed over a period of 6 months, Sarah reported. The criminals gained access during legitimate renovation work being carried out on the estate's climate control systems. They used this opportunity to install their hidden storage facility and forgery equipment. Elena Rodriguez had been charged with negligently providing classified information to foreign agents, though prosecutors acknowledged her lack of criminal intent. Her cooperation with the investigation had been instrumental in unraveling the broader conspiracy, and she was expected to receive a suspended sentence in exchange for her testimony against the primary perpetrators. The forgery operation was far more extensive than initially believed, Sarah continued. Analysis of the equipment found in the converted stables reveals that the group had been producing high-quality replicas of various royal and museum artifacts for at least 2 years before attempting to steal the crown jewels. This revelation had prompted emergency security reviews at museums and heritage sites across the United Kingdom. Several institutions had discovered that items in their collections had been replaced with sophisticated forgeries, leading to a broader investigation into the international art theft network. Marcus Hoffman's cooperation had led to arrests in Germany, France, and Monaco as authorities moved to dismantle the entire criminal organization. His testimony revealed that the crown jewels theft had been intended as the group's final operation before retiring with enough money to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. The estimated value of artifacts stolen and forged by this network over the past 5 years exceeds £200 million, Sarah announced, causing murmurs of astonishment around the conference room. The crown jewels would have been their most valuable acquisition, both financially and symbolically. Prince William had remained largely silent during the briefing, but now he leaned forward with obvious concern. Detective Inspector, what measures are being taken to prevent similar operations in the future? Sarah had anticipated this question and had spent considerable time preparing her recommendations. Your Royal Highness, we're proposing a complete overhaul of security protocols for royal residences and heritage sites. This includes enhanced background checks for all staff with access to valuable collections, regular security audits by independent firms, and the implementation of new technology to detect unauthorized access to sensitive areas. The investigation had also revealed weaknesses in the international cooperation mechanisms designed to prevent art theft. The criminals had exploited differences in legal systems and communication protocols between countries to move stolen items and establish legitimate-seeming business operations. We're working with Interpol and the FBI to establish new protocols for tracking suspicious art transactions and sharing intelligence about known criminal networks, Sarah explained. The Crown Jewels case has become a template for understanding how international art theft operations function in the digital age. Commissioner Harrison addressed the group's concerns about media coverage and public confidence in royal security. The successful recovery of the Crown Jewels and the arrests of all primary suspects has largely satisfied public concerns. However, we recognize that this investigation has highlighted vulnerabilities that must be addressed comprehensively. As the briefing concluded, Prince William approached Sarah with obvious gratitude and respect. Detective Inspector Matthews, I want to personally thank you for your professionalism throughout this investigation. You managed an extraordinarily delicate situation with skill and integrity. Thank you, Your Royal Highness. Though I have to say, this case has taught me that protecting our national heritage requires constant vigilance and adaptation to new threats. Prince William nodded thoughtfully. Indeed, the criminals in this case exploited our trust and our openness to cultural cooperation. We must find ways to maintain those values while protecting ourselves against those who would abuse them. The long-term implications of the Crown conspiracy extended far beyond the immediate criminal prosecutions. The case had exposed how modern criminal networks could exploit the intersection of technology, international commerce, and institutional trust to carry out sophisticated theft operations. Sarah's final report included recommendations for legislative changes that would strengthen penalties for heritage crime and improve international cooperation in tracking stolen cultural artifacts. The case had demonstrated that traditional law enforcement approaches were insufficient to combat modern art theft networks that operated across multiple jurisdictions. The Crown Jewels are now back in their rightful place at the Tower of London, Sarah concluded in her report. But this investigation has revealed the urgent need for enhanced protection of our cultural heritage in an increasingly connected but also increasingly dangerous world. 6 months later, Sarah received notification that she was being awarded the Order of the British Empire for her role in recovering the Crown Jewels and dismantling the international art theft network. The ceremony at Buckingham Palace would be conducted by Prince William, who had become a strong advocate for heritage protection following the investigation. Elena Rodriguez had accepted a position with a cultural heritage protection organization, using her experience to help train staff at museums and royal sites to recognize and prevent similar infiltration attempts. Her cooperation had been crucial in preventing future crimes, and she had found a way to transform her mistake into a positive contribution to heritage security. Camila had gradually rebuilt her public reputation, though the investigation had left her more cautious about hosting cultural events at her estate. The converted stables had been completely renovated and now served as a legitimate artist residency program, with stringent security measures to prevent any future criminal exploitation. The Crown conspiracy case became a landmark in law enforcement training, studied by police academies and security professionals around the world. It demonstrated how traditional crimes like theft could be transformed by international networks, sophisticated technology, and the exploitation of institutional trust. As Sarah reflected on the case that had defined her career, she recognized that the successful resolution had required not just good detective work, but also the courage to pursue the truth regardless of the political and social pressures involved. The Crown Jewels were safe, the criminals had been brought to justice, and new protections were in place to prevent similar crimes. But, perhaps most importantly, the investigation had shown that even the most sophisticated criminal networks could be defeated when law enforcement agencies worked together with determination, professionalism, and an unwavering commitment to protecting the cultural treasures that define national identity and heritage. The case file was officially closed, but its lessons would continue to influence how Britain protected its most precious historical artifacts for generations to come. The Crown conspiracy had tested the resilience of the monarchy, the effectiveness of law enforcement, and the security of cultural heritage. And, In each case, the institutions had proven strong enough to meet the challenge and emerge stronger than before.